Hello, my name is Odeicia. I am from San Sebastián, in Spain, but I now live in Pamplona. I have a degree in law and a degree in business administration and management. And I am very happy to open a new WTM center in Spain. The world is in a desperate situation. If we look around, all we can see are social, economic, and environmental problems. Problems that we humans have caused. At first glance, this can make us feel pessimistic about the state of the world and about us humans as a species. And we encounter the thorny issue of the human condition, which could be defined as why, when the ideals of life are so clearly to be cooperative and loving, are we humans so competitive, aggressive, and selfish? Are we humans essentially good, or are we bad? This is the question that every human being has asked themselves upon reaching adolescence for 2 million years. And since they have not been able to answer it, they have had no choice but to resign themselves and block the topic of the human condition from their minds. Block any criticism we receive from our instincts and focus on achieving fame, fortune, power, and glory so we could feel fine, so we could feel worthy. In short, to try to feel that we are good. But all this material glory and this competition for power, although necessary, was inevitably going to end up destroying ourselves and the world. If we were not able to find a rational, scientific, clear, and direct explanation that would address and solve the issue of the human condition, which then could solve the psychosis that human beings have suffered for 2 million years. Because only with knowledge can a psychosis be solved. Only with knowledge can you solve the root of all problems, which is within us. And this is precisely what the Australian biologist Jeremy Griffith achieved with his theory of instinct versus intellect. This theory basically states that natural selection of genes gives species instinctive orientations, such as to a migratory flight path for birds. But a nerve-based conscious mind needs understanding to operate. So when a fully conscious mind emerges and begins experimenting in understanding, it unavoidably comes into conflict with the pre-established instinctive orientations that are, in effect, intolerant of these deviating experiments in self-management. So, when a species ruled by instincts, the moment it acquires consciousness, it will inevitably generate a battle between the two. A battle that can only be concluded when that understanding is found. This understanding is what the efforts of all human beings that have ever lived on the face of Earth have finally achieved. And this puts us in the right situation to save the world from destruction by terminal alienation. This explanation is presented in this wonderful book, Freedom, The End of the Human Condition, which is Griffith's masterpiece and that can be downloaded for free in the World Transformation Movement website, and whose introduction you can see in the incredible interview that the British actor and broadcaster Craig Conway did with Jeremy, and which is available in the World Transformation Movement website. In this book, he not only explains and solves the human condition, which again is the underlying cause of all the psychosis and suffering on Earth, but also addresses key issues of our times, such as the conflict between science and religion, men and women, and sex as we humans practice it, the business of politics, racism and wars, the climate crisis and the environmental movement, wealth inequalities and generational conflicts. And this book puts an end to all these problems. In particular, and as a member of Generation Z, I have greatly identified with the words that Jeremy dedicates to my generation in his 2023 work, Our Meaning. Snowflakes is the nickname members of my generation have received because we melt at the slightest pressure. And while this is true, without Jeremy's redeeming and compassionate explanation of the human condition, about how it emerged 2 million years ago and how the psychological upset that this battle generates in our minds has been accumulating generation after generation, until making the current levels of upset intolerable, and how my generation and the younger ones, we are in the front line of this battle, and we have been the most affected by it. Without this explanation, the only thing we could feel is guilt, uncertainty, restlessness, and confusion, which is, in fact, what we have felt. And that is why it is no coincidence that we are the fiercest defenders of the recognition of mental health. But thanks to this information, we can give meaning to our suffering and abandon the nihilism and detachment so characteristic of our generation. And we can really do something about our troubled mental health. And that is why I have decided to found a World Transformation Movement Center to help in the dissemination of this knowledge that is so vital to saving human beings from our own destruction. My path to finding this information began quite recently, a little over a year ago. But I really think that I have been needing this information all my life, because it is the software that my brain needed to function. Since my adolescence, I have suffered from anxiety, and I have wanted to understand what exactly happened to leave behind a happy childhood and become a competitive person in search of achievements that could alleviate that anxiety. Realizing I was trapped in a rat race in which I chased anything that made me feel like I was good and not bad, but that I never felt full, and that the emptiness always returned, caused me to fall into a deep depression. And that's when I started looking for answers. Philosophy, psychology, self-help books, therapy, Buddhism, meditation, all kind of things. But when I discovered this information through an advert on YouTube, I saw that it was something different from everything else. I realized that I had reached a point in my life where it was literally for me, life or death, to find this information, because me and the rest of the human beings cannot go indefinitely trying to prove that we are good through material glory. That was never going to work, nor was the dogmatic imposition of cooperative behavior. Sooner or later, we are going to need to understand ourselves. We are going to need the true spiritual glory of compassionate understanding of ourselves. And you only need to take an honest look at the world to know how much it needs this information and how much each and every one of us needs it. I first watched the interview and then started reading Freedom. This information stays in your head. Weeks could pass since I had seen the interview or read some part of the book, and it always came back to my mind. That didn't happen to me with any of the other things. In fact, this information has answered me questions I didn't even know I had. The fundamental difference between this information and that of any other thinker or prophet is that this is the true, complete, and redemptive explanation of the human being from its origins to the present. I read Nietzsche, Camus, Schopenhauer, Jung, Freud. They are all great thinkers that Jeremy cites and explains, but they only give hints about the meaning of men. Jeremy has been able to paint the whole picture of the human condition. This is the truth, what I had been looking for all my life and I didn't know. When I started this journey, at no time did I intend to do something good for the world. I didn't know that could be done, that the world could be changed. I assumed that it was like that people are selfish, cruel, and indifferent by nature. And I had never been a big fan of good causes. For me, they never solved the underlying problem. But it turns out that human beings are not only good, but that we are the heroes of the story of life on Earth. Even though we suffer from a terrible upset, from 2 million years of corrupting search for knowledge of our troubled human condition. I just wanted to find some way to be happy and functional in life. But this information changes everything, starting with me. I no longer have to prove my goodness, because I can now understand why I'm good and a very good and meaningful reason for my upset, and that is such a relief. We all can now be free of that whole battle and self-preoccupation, suffering, and neurosis that goes with it. Free to help take this knowledge to the world and participate in the most meaningful project on earth. So this is really the breakthrough of breakthroughs, and will end all the suffering in the world. So please, investigate for yourself, because you will soon discover, as so many people already have, the power of this amazing knowledge.